Love lives here.
And I am so happy to be here this morning. And I was thrilled to see Reverend Jeff this morning. I was expecting him to be out and about enjoying his family. But, as things happen, um, there was a snafu with some travel luggage, and that's being taken care of. And Reverend Jeff can be here with us today. So it's wonderful to have him with us. And I love you, Reverend Jeff. So it was great to see you this morning. The theme of May is Holy, Holy Uprising. And last week, Reverend Jeff talked about revolutionary love. I want to remind us that we're reading this word with a capital R and then the word evolutionary. And the R stands for radical. So we're looking at radical evolutionary love. Revolutionary is defined as involving or causing complete and dramatic change. Oh, I like that definition. Involving or causing complete or dramatic change. By this definition, the fundamental teaching of love by the master teachers of the world, and I think in particular, especially in the West, Jesus epitomized that teaching of love in a tradition that was heavily weighted toward law, right? And kind of that law that is done because people aren't at a level that they can move forward on their own, or maybe the powers that be believe that. Now, Jesus caused this dramatic change in the way that we think and interact with one another, that is still evolving as we grow as spiritual beings. So this hasn't stopped. He introduced this idea of radical love, and it hasn't stopped. We're still evolving into our understanding of radical love. And Jesus was considered, just this blazing, firebranding, blazing radical. His ideas were just kind of out of sight for a lot of people, but there were people, many, many people who were ready to hear this message. And we are reaping the benefits of that message today. And, one of the things that I really think was going on in that era with Jesus as well was that he had confidence in humanity's ability to discern the truth. He had that deep confidence because as a human being himself, he had touched that divine in him. He had just answered that call of the Christ consciousness and embodied it. So he knew that was possible for each and every person. So he had this, just complete confidence in humanity's ability. Now, simply following the law with the lowercase letter L was no longer sufficient to propel us to the next level. So that's what Jesus provided in that particular part of the world. And, as it spread, as that message spread and intermingled with all of the other messages about love, we have this synergy that's taking place and this power that is coming forward in a new way that had never been experienced before. And there's always that radical edge that beckons us to know everything, to know love in everything that we do. And of course, that's what we do here in Riverside, right? At our center. We are just anchored in that love. We say love lives here, and love lives here and grows here too. And this week, preparing the building for people to come back and enjoy it has been really wonderful, seeing that life and seeing that love and that care that's going into taking care of our building is just wonderful. It's a manifestation of love in that way. When we received the monthly theme, I was struck by the title, Holy, Holy Uprising. What surfaced for me is a natural phenomenon that occurs here on the West Coast. In late spring and summer, we can expect strong and sustained winds from the northwest. These winds cause an ocean condition called upwelling. And when I learned about this years and years ago, I was just so taken by this whole idea of upwelling, right? And I don't know why it resonated so strongly with me, but I just thought it was so dynamic and so forceful and so encouraging. I just love this idea of upwelling. So when upwelling is occurring, what happens is cold, nutrient-rich water is drawn to the surface from deep below the waves. So upwelling brings up all of the nutrients to the top layers of the water. And it's cold water, right? It's that cold, clear, refreshing water that's coming up from the depths. These conditions fuel the growth of tiny plants and animals called plankton, which live near the surface and support massive schools of forage fish that in turn become a buffet for seabirds, seals, whales, and bigger fish such as tuna and sharks. And this is what characterizes our coastline, right? We have one of the most ecologically diverse coastlines and ecosystems on Earth right here. So I think that's probably what just kind of fueled my imagination, thinking about that upwelling. So counterintuitively, our waters are cooler in the late spring and summer than in the fall or winter because of upwelling. And I just think about that cool water as refreshing. And it's bringing up all of this richness from the depths. I'm always in awe of the natural world and what it teaches us about spirit. So, this lends itself to a wonderful analogy, of spiritual upwelling. Just think about the idea of spiritual upwelling as deep inspiration that fuels us. So when we're in that place and allowing, wind can also be spirit, right? Allowing the wind of spirit to move through us and bring forward all of those nutrients that support life. And certainly love is one of those spiritual nutrients. And all those God qualities that we know about, love, abundance, light, everything. Those are all the spiritual nutrients that come to the surface when we are in that inspired state. And when we're willing to accept these God-given gifts. Holy upwelling is something that's always available to us and allows us to rise, to live in alignment with spirit. Now, today's talk is titled, This Too is God. And how many times have you said that in your life? I'll have to speak for myself. I've probably said that, I don't know, maybe thousands of times, in exasperation. And, that question mark is really important. And, sometimes it's like something surfaces that's unpleasant, uncomfortable, or things that, I just want to avoid. And that list can be kind of long sometimes, those things that I want to avoid. Um, and I could name all of those, that fall into that category. Um, we might also divide the world into secular and spiritual as a part of a conscious or unconscious avoidance strategy. Well, that's not spiritual, to talk about that, or not engaging. That's a form of avoidance, and yet we can, thrust our head in the clouds. I'm too spiritual to do that. Or we can stick our head in the sands and just, get rid of our sight and hearing and all of that by sticking our heads into the sand. And yet, here we are with life in session, both personally and collectively. And we wouldn't be here if we weren't meant to live life to the fullest. And it allows us to have that chance to express love in every situation, no matter what it is. So instead of talking about God qualities as ideal abstractions, we are called to live them in the world. A wonderful example of this happened last week. And I was moved by the generosity of the Blackfeet Nation in northern Montana, who gave their surplus vaccine to First Nations people and others in Canada. About 30% of the people, as of last week, were vaccinated in the United States. However, in Canada, the figure is about 3%. Now, just think about that. That's a big difference. Here we live in this abundance. 30% of our population, as of last week, was vaccinated. And why is this so? Because Canada does not produce the vaccine and has to rely on the global supply chain like many other countries. So we kind of forget about that, right? We forget, how fortunate we are, that we have the ability to manufacture. We have all of those materials available to us to manufacture. And sometimes we take it for granted, or we we don't appreciate it, perhaps. But here we are, we've seen this nation, the Blackfeet Nation, having surplus vaccine and giving it to their relatives across the border and also to all Canadians. So this was just such an act of love and an act of generosity. And before the nurses began administering the shots, they recited a prayer in their language that was dedicated to people seeking refuge from the virus. To me, that entire process was a prayer. Seeing the unity of humanity instead of any borders, being thankful for the abundance that was theirs, and going a step beyond by sharing the abundance was so inspiring. And then they spoke their word before administering the vaccine, knowing that the vaccine is a prayer already answered. This shows deep spiritual awareness embodied in every act and transcends chaos into harmony. So I was just so uplifted by that. I was uplifted by that story. And, I've kind of held on to it for the past couple of weeks, thinking about that generosity. And then this week, I found out that it was happening with various Native nations and organizations who were sharing their vaccine with neighbors. So they were vaccinating everybody. They were just saying, come on in, come on down. We want, we're sharing what we have with you. Come on down. We want you to be happy and healthy along with us. So this was done with such tremendous kindness and friendliness and all those things that just kind of buoy us up, right? That show us that this holy, holy upwelling is occurring all over. We're waking up, aren't we? Reverend Michael Beckwith reminds us in God awareness, problems dissolve because there are not real problems in the mind of God. There is only perfect patterns of existence and divine ideas. Oh man. When we know that, right? When we really know that, there's nothing that we can't do, right? We just know that. If we just know that and take that in, there's no lack or limitation in the mind of God, no exclusions, nor racial divides, nor border divisions. There is only spirit in action. The Centers for Spiritual Living Global Vision states, we envision a world where personal responsibility joins with social conscience in every area of the political, corporate, and social sectors, providing sustainable structure to further the emerging global consciousness. This is a big, exciting vision. We have set our mental equivalent for living large in every aspect of our life. We're seeing the blind spots that have limited us in the past. And I think we've uncovered a lot of those this past year. That time to go within and then allowing those winds of inspiration to move through us. We are involved in this holy, holy upwelling right now. And those things that have limited us in the past, those blind spots that everyone has, we have different ones, but, we all have them, right, in different areas. And that's what's wonderful about being in community, because it gives us a chance to uncover those blind spots and live, our philosophy and our vision of the world, to live in love. And, when we do this, we can see the causes of suffering more clearly. The Buddha identified what he called the three poisons: greed, ignorance, and hatred. The three poisons are the energy of ego's three basic attitudes: for me, against me, or don't care. And I'm chuckling here because I recognize that, right? I mean, these are just basic attitudes. Is it for me? Oh, great. Is it against me? Oh man, I'm gonna knock that out, right? Or I don't care, right? That is very ego-centered thinking, and we're moving way beyond that. We're moving beyond that. All unwholesome. These are all unwholesome states of mind. And variations on these three themes are fueled by that attitude. And I often think about those three poisons. I really do. I'm trying to think about them more and have them there in my mind. When I start looking at what's going on with me and then with the world. When we are all active in all areas that affect us and others, the political, corporate, and social sectors, using the Buddha's formulation for identifying unwholesomeness, we can build both our spiritual and global skills to live in peace and harmony with all life. And those basic attitudes of ego, right? And I'll say them again: for me, against me, and don't care. We realize that it's really an impoverished way to live. It's just so it's barely above it's barely above a baseline. If we're looking at a heartbeat, right? It would barely be above that straight line. So we're not even feeling our heartbeat when we're living in that way. If we turn to the early followers of Jesus, we can hear the large vision of Christianity when Paul writes in Romans 14:19. Let us then pursue what makes for peace and for mutual uplifting. Oh, just very, very easy words, right? Let us then pursue what makes for peace and for mutual uplifting. Paul's words go far beyond the basic ego attitude, right? Already it's gone beyond that. Let's work together, let's pursue it. Let's pursue it. And that doesn't mean that we already know the answer. But when we're in that flow, when we're in that holy, holy upwelling, those answers come easily. They come easily and effortlessly to us. So those early Christian communities were called to live the vision of Christ consciousness in love and compassion for all. And what an inspiration, right? And and we recognize those teachings of Jesus the Christ as informing our spiritual practice as well. Now, thinking about, things that we avoid, or, what our lives look like when we live this way, I was reminded of this movie called Pleasantville. And there's two siblings who are trapped in a 50s black and white TV show where the residents are seemingly perfect, right? So they're at that baseline that I was talking about, barely a heartbeat, right? And everything is in black and white. And they didn't even know that there was so much missing from their life. So they were living in ignorance, right? And as they learned something new about themselves and their relationships with others as a result of these two kids being trapped in the TV show, colors started coming into their life. And until everything was in color. And I thought, what a beautiful, beautiful metaphor for our spiritual journey as we become more aware of who we are and of all of the goodness that God is. Our lives become colorful, filled with color, filled with energy, filled with life. So this week, let's wake up to something new. Put the radical in evolutionary. What have you turned away from that could help uplift the world? What have you thought? Well, I don't want to get involved in that. I'll see it and I'll turn away from it. I just can't be bothered, right? Indifference, right? That's indifference. So let's step out of that. Let's step into life. Let's live our lives in full color in a holy, holy way, knowing that Spirit's gifts are upwelling from the deep. And we know, as Ernest Holmes says, that deep answers deep. And we'll be riding high on that wave of spirit. So let's turn within. And knowing that this is a very holy moment right now. And I am grateful to recognize God, God the good, magnificent, and knowing that each and every life is that magnificence of God. That what calls us from the deep is to share all of those God-given gifts that each and every one of us carry, that each and every one of us have access to. And as we step into this week, I know that those gifts come forward for each and every person, that that we are answering, 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 and answering any kind of curiosity that we might have that's speaking to us, that we just go into that with enthusiasm and with a desire to uplift everyone. And as we uplift ourselves, we uplift others. So getting in the flow of life, getting into just that movement that life is changing the way that we live in this world, is creating something radically, radically different than what we are emerging from. This is an exciting time. This is a time for love to blossom. And I know that this is what we're involved in right now, the blossoming and the newness of this earth. And I allow all of this to be, knowing it is already done in the mind of God. And so it is.
Love lives